Gouache can be a tricky medium, but in this video you will learn the basics and how to handle the most common gouache problems. How much water do you really need? Why aren't your blends seamless? And how do you pick the right paper? And much more. The best part is, we will take the knowledge and paint 2 beginner-friendly sketches with gouache. My name is Kate, I'm a huge gouache fan, and for this video I'll be using an affordable HIMI set. You can use any gouache brand you already have, and let's get started. So, what is gouache? Gouache is a water-soluble paint, which makes it similar to watercolor in how you can thin it with water and reactivate it after it dries. Gouache is opaque, which makes it similar to acrylics in that you can layer solid colors and cover mistakes easily. Gouache dries to a flat, matte finish and consists of natural pigment, water, and a binding agent. How much water you should use? To figure that out, I suggest practicing with all possible options using the paints you have, because there is no single answer. Too much water or too little water could be different with different gouache brands. From my experience, HIMI, which I'm using today, doesn't tolerate water much. If you add too much, you'll end up with a transparent, streaky result. For the best result, I use a slightly wet brush and aim for a nice, creamy consistency. How to avoid streaky results? I already mentioned that gouache can look streaky if you use the wrong amount of water, but there are 2 more reasons. First, using a brush that is too small for the area you want to cover. A small brush can't hold enough pigment, and too much scrubbing in one spot can cause uneven washes. Look how much easier and faster it is when a fully loaded, larger brush does the same job. The second reason is not waiting long enough for the previous layer to dry. Whether you are adding another color on top or going over with the same color for more even coverage, you need to wait. Patience is the key to smooth application. How to mix clean, vibrant colors. Mixing clean colors with gouache is all about limiting how many pigments you combine. A good rule is no more than 2 colors at once plus white if needed. If you need a third color, add it very carefully. With high quality gouache, this is easier because the paints have more pure pigment and less filler. Some combinations almost always create muddy results and should be avoided if you want a clean color. Mixing complementary colors directly like red and green, blue and orange, yellow plus purple. Although red and green can make a nice brown, usually those combinations produce brownish or grayish tones. Sometimes I mix them on purpose to get a muted hue with a specific undertone. Mixing warm and cool versions of the same primer, lemon yellow with a burgundy red, often gives you a dull orange instead of bright one. A cleaner approach is to build secondary colors from carefully chosen primaries, for example, lemon yellow with a phthalo blue for a fresh green, or magenta with ultramarine for a vivid purple. How to choose paper? Gouache works on almost any paper as long as it's thick enough. For example, my current go-to sketchbook is Art Creation and the paper is 140 GSM, which is pretty thin and it buckles a little, but I don't mind. Any drawing paper 200 GSM or more should work well with gouache. Blending with gouache. Blending can be tricky because gouache dries fast and it's important to blend while the paint is still wet. Make sure the brush is loaded with enough pigment and keep your brush passes to a minimum for the smoothest results. If the area has already dried, it's usually better to glaze a thin layer on top instead of trying to reblend, which can disturb the base layer. Well, I have 2 more quick but important tips before we start practicing. Tip number 1, be ready to use a lot of white pigment. The white in your set will be the first tube to run out, so it makes sense to buy a bigger one. Tip number 2, buy a stay wet palette. It saves so much paint. I use it all the time. My pigments stay fresh and workable much longer. You will find the link in the description along with all other links to the gouache and brushes I use. Let me know in the comments what you learned from this video. Writing things down helps remember better, and your comments also support my channel. Thank you. Yay! We finished the theory part. Let's jump into practice. We are going to paint two beginner-friendly fun little sketches, an avocado and a pair of tulips. I'll use my 24 color HIMI set. You can use any gouache you have, and it's fine if you have fewer colors or slightly different ones, just use similar ones. For brushes, I'll use one larger flat brush and one small round brush. Also 2 cups of clean water and a mixing palette. I'm going to use this paper from Paul Rubens paper pad because I really like the size and texture. And I'd really love to see your results. Everyone who sends me at least one finished gouache sketch made with this tutorial will receive a 50% discount code for my digital workbooks, Find Your Art Style, or 100 Sketching Ideas. You can DM me your paintings on Instagram or send me an email. All the details are in the description. So let's get started and paint the avocado first. Here's how to quickly sketch avocado pieces with a pencil. Start with 2 loose ovals to establish the composition and make sure your sketch won't touch the edges and stays centered. Then draw 2 center lines, place them at an angle, with one line slightly tilted to the left and the other tilted to the right. This way, the composition will look more interesting, and try keeping those lines transparent and subtle. On top of this structure, which will serve as a guide, draw 2 avocado pieces touching each other, and their form is looks like a squished bowling pin or like a droplet with a white top. Next, add circles to mark the seed, and then the last step is to draw a shadow. For this sketch, we'll consider the light source coming from the upper right side. That's why the shadow is placed in the lower left. This step-by-step can be found in the descriptions. Feel free to download it. Maybe for you it will be easier to follow the steps. The sketch is ready to be colored. Let's start with the base avocado pulp color, a yellowish light green. I have a very bright green, so I mix it with a mustard yellowish shade plus white to make it lighter and more soft. Then I fill in the pulp area, leaving the seed area blank for now. Next, I take the same golden brown mustard shade and I mix it with white. If you don't have that exact color, mix yellow with a little bit of red and white. Use this to fill in the seed areas and keep the paint consistency creamy. The next step is to mix a color close to the pulp tone, but a bit more saturated and intense. Use it to paint the area closer to the peel. It's like adding a thicker outline around the shape. Now let's add volume to the seed. I have a reddish brown, similar to burnt sienna, which I lighten with mustard and white. Remember, the light source is coming from the upper right. With that in mind, I shade the lower left side of the seed and then add a cast shadow. On the other piece of avocado, I add more white to the same mix and fill in half of the seed area. For the peel, I mix dark green with dark blue. Instead of painting an even outline, I vary the thickness and intensity of the color, keeping the darkest parts where 2 pieces touch each other and on the lower left side, which is in shadow. Then I load my brush with pink. This can be a mix of cool red or magenta with white. The best is magenta, or probably you already have pink, and add it a few touches. This creates a sense of luminosity, and the pink also complements the palette nicely. For the cast shadow, I want a bluish gray. To get that, I mix mustard with light blue. You can add more blue if you'd like it more vibrant. And now for a few finishing touches, I use clean white paint to add highlights. Then I pick a vibrant yellow to give the pulp more saturation, adding small touches to the right side of the avocado pieces. Finally, with the reddish brown, I add some contrast to the seed area, and that's all. That's it. Look at this cute sketch. I am really happy with the result. What about you? And I'm so curious what gouache you use for the painting. Let me know in the comments, and don't forget to send me your finished result for a 50% discount code for my digital workbooks. Let's move on to the tulips, and this time we're also gonna start with a pencil sketch, and I'll break it down for you into a few simple steps. Step number 1. Draw 2 central petals. Notice their form. The widest part is closer to the bottom of each petal, and the second flower is much smaller and more closed, which makes it appear longer and less wide. Then add a few more petals, and since they're mostly hidden behind the central one, they are hardly visible. Next, draw thin, slightly curved stems and 2 leaves that vary in size. To suggest volume, add a central line on the biggest one to show how it curves and wraps. That's the sketch we will be coloring, and you can also download the step-by-step sketch guide in the link in the description. Now let's move on to color. I start by mixing bright yellow with white for a soft pastel tint. Also, I mix magenta with white for a pastel pink. And then I blend the two, so the lower part of the tulips is yellow and the upper part is pink. Blending is much easier when both colors are close in value, like here, both are light. I gently go over the area where the colors meet with either of the two mixes. While the flowers are drying, I paint the stems and leaves with a cool green shade, mixing blue and green. If your mix looks too dark, add a little white. Next, it's time to add shadows. To the yellow-white mix we used before, I add a touch of orange to make the shade slightly deeper. The change is very subtle. For this sketch, the light source also comes from the upper right side, so the shading falls on the lower left. I do the same with the pink mix by adding more magenta. The back petals are in shades, so I paint them darker. With a clean brush and pure magenta, I lightly outline parts of the back petals, since that area doesn't catch much light. For the stems and leaves, I deepen the green mix by adding more dark green and apply it mostly on the left side to suggest volume. Now for the finishing touches, I add bright accents. I slightly dilute white and use it to highlight where the light hits the petals, adding a few touches on the leaves as well. To keep the lighting more consistent, I lighten the right side of leaves with a paler green. To make the stems and leaves A bit more interesting, I add small touches of the flower colors yellow and pink. At this stage it already looks lovely, but for more depth I add another layer of orange to the flowers, a bit more deep. And here it is, a beautiful tulip gouache sketch. I really hope you are happy with your result too. Let me know in the comments what are your thoughts about the video, and thank you very much for watching. See you in the next one. Bye bye.